If you've been doing tons of stretching but still struggle with tight hamstrings, this video is for you. It doesn't matter how much stretching you do, if you aren't applying the principle of progressive overload to your stretching, you're not going to be making any long-lasting improvements. So in this video, I'm going to show you one of my favorite hamstring stretching exercises, and then I'm going to show you step by step what you need to do to progressively overload it so that you can finally make some long-lasting progress in your hamstring flexibility. And by the way, if you don't know me, my name is PJ, I'm a flexibility coach, and I had to develop my flexibility as an adult in his 20s. So I know what it's like to be stiff as a board and dealing with joint pains, because I've been there before and I put in the work to get where I am today. So the exercise that we're going over in this video is called the elevated hamstring good morning. And the reason that I like it so much is because it's very scalable, which makes applying progressive overload super simple for both complete beginners and advanced athletes alike. To set up the elevated hamstring good morning, all we're going to need is an elevated surface to prop our leg up into hip flexion, and depending on your level of ability, you may also want some weights or some sort of support to hold on to. Ideally, we're going to want our support to be approximately hip height, so that when our leg is elevated in position, our foot is approximately in line with our hip and parallel to the floor. But with that being said, if you're finding that hip height elevation is a bit too challenging for where you're at right now, then we can start with a lower elevation at first and aim to gradually work our way up to hip height over time. As for our supporting leg, we want our foot approximately stacked underneath our hip, and we ideally want to keep our foot pointing straight forward so that we can square up our pelvis and create a stricter hamstring stretch through internal rotation. From here, all we're doing is hinging forward into the stretch, doing our best to keep our back as flat as possible, and once we find our end range, we're going to hold the stretch there for 3 to 5 seconds before returning back up. Now, this exercise can be done with or without weight depending on your level of ability, but I'll talk a bit more about that in just a moment. The most important aspect about this exercise is making sure that we fully straighten our elevated leg and keep the knee locked. So as we're hinging forward, we want to make sure to actively flex our quad and engage the muscles in our leg to keep that knee locked and help promote greater relaxation through the hamstrings. In addition to flexing the quad, we also want to think about actively squeezing our abs and hip flexors together to utilize our compression strength on the shortening side to help pull us a little deeper into the stretch while maintaining good form. At a more beginner level, if your hamstrings aren't very conditioned to being in stretched positions, it's probably best to start with just your body weight until you build a bit more capacity in your end ranges. The easiest entry point to start with is going to be setting up with a stick or dowel that you can hold on to for support, so it's easier to maintain your balance and some of your body weight is being absorbed by your arms. Then from there, the next progression would be going hands-free. So with this variation, you're still only using your body weight to load the stretch, but now you're actually applying the full load of your body weight onto the muscles and challenging your balance and coordination a little more. Once you're comfortable going hands-free with this exercise, we can then start to introduce some additional weight to help guide us deeper into the stretch and increase our strength capacities in those end range, fully lengthened positions. I personally prefer to use dumbbells with this exercise, but you can use any form of free weight that you have available to you. Once you're able to load the exercise with additional weight, we're basically going to treat it the same as we would any other weighted exercise. Start with an appropriate amount of weight for where you're currently at, and then gradually add more weight over time to challenge the muscles further. But it's also worth mentioning that increasing the weight is not the only way to progressively overload this exercise. Adding more time under tension is also an effective method for increasing your capacity in the end ranges, and that can be as simple as adding a few extra reps or just holding each rep for longer durations. But when it comes to scaling this exercise to more advanced levels, increasing the weight is definitely the largest lever that we can pull, because adding time under tension is effective to an extent, but you can only add so many extra reps until it starts to become a little redundant and time consuming. So now that we have all that covered, it's time to address the elephant in the room, which is, how the fuck do I actually implement all of this information? Don't worry, I won't leave you hanging. Circling back to what I just mentioned, if we're treating this exercise the same as we would any other weightlifting exercise, that means we're not going to be doing this every day. Because if you're working at the appropriate level of intensity and consistently challenging yourself with progressive overload, then we're gonna need to give our hamstrings some time to recover before we reintroduce the stimulus. You wouldn't smash out a heavy bench press every day, would you? No, of course not. That would be completely counterproductive. Your muscles would be sore all the time, your strength would go to shit, and you'd be much more prone to injury. Well, I want you to apply that same thought process to your flexibility training too. But just to give you some tactical advice that you can put into practice, here is how I would generally prescribe an exercise like this to my clients. Let's aim to hit 3 sets of 8 to 10 repetitions per side at a frequency of 2 to 3 times per week. We want at least 48 hours of recovery before doing it again, and then the next time you do it, we see if we can make any progressions from our last session. So that's it for this video. I hope this helps you finally open up those stubborn hamstrings of yours. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more flexibility and mobility content just like this. And if you got any questions, drop them in the comments. Peace.